coming soon to own on video and DVD.
Hi, I'm Andy Brophy.
And my name is Olivia Haines.
Welcome to the Melbourne International Games Week Steam Festival. Tonight, we've got two very special interviews with two very special video game developers from here in sunny Melbourne.
That's right.
Let's cut straight to it.
The first interview will be with me.
And then the second interview will be with me. Our inbox has been absolutely flooded with fan letters, filled with questions for us.
Holy moly, Andy. This is a lot of letters.
Let's read them now. Okay, on to our first letter. It says, "Hi Olivia, wow, that trailer was so sick. Can you tell me what kind of game Surf Club is?"
So, Surf Club is a coming-of-age adventure game. You play as a young woman named Holly, who returns to her hometown to try and rekindle an old relationship. The game follows her as she goes back to this town, reconnects with the locals, and sort of tries to rebuild this old relationship. And as the game progresses, the lines begin to blur between the past and the present, and she has to try and figure out where her future is going to go.
Okay, on to our next question. This one says, "Hi Olivia, wow. It looks like Surf Club has a very retro-inspired aesthetic with its pre-rendered cutscenes and its pixelated graphics. I was wondering, what drew you to this art style?"
Well, I think I've always been quite drawn to this art style. The games I grew up with were mostly PlayStation 1, GameCube, Game Boy Advance era games, and I don't think I ever really grew out of them. And often when I'm playing games, I keep coming back to these old games for inspiration, and I find I still get a lot of enjoyment out of them. I think because I hold so much nostalgia for older games, it just made sense to sort of go in this art style direction for a game that heavily features sort of nostalgia as a theme. A big influence to me when I started making games were the Final Fantasy games on PlayStation 1, and in fact a lot of JRPGs from sort of the 90s. I really love the pre-rendered cutscenes in those games and how they're like kind of a reward for progressing in the game. You know, like as you play the game, you don't really have like a clear idea of what characters look like because of the like liminal art style, and then having these scenes that sort of give you this extra dimension to the characters and the world is like really cool, and I sort of wanted that with my game, where like the art style is like kind of simple, and then you have things like a pre-rendered cutscene to give you this extra sense of immersion and like connection with the world. So yeah, the art style just made sense for the kind of game it is.
Wow, this one's from Columbus, Ohio. Let's see what they have to say. Hi, Olivia. Wow, that all sounds really, really cool. But I want to know about the characters, the setting, the story. Who are these people? What makes them tick?
So, the two main characters are Holly and Bede. Holly is very outgoing, very extroverted, a bubbly sort of person, whereas Bede is very introverted, prefers to keep to himself, and the two are kind of opposites in that way, and they're quite drawn to each other because each other sort of has something that they can provide for the other. So like Holly helps Bede get out of his shell, and Bede helps Holly sort of slow down and think a bit more logically about problems. So they're very drawn to each other. In the game, Bede is new to the town that they live in, which is Olive Bay, and Holly sort of gets him comfortable, teaches him how to surf, and the two become friends really quickly. They have a lot of fun together, and you know, they have to try and figure out in the game whether they want their relationship to continue into adulthood, basically. You know, when you have like differences with someone in a relationship, it can be really good, like you balance each other out, but it can cause conflicts. And yeah, that's sort of what the story is about in that sense. The setting of the game is a town called Olive Bay, like I said. It's inspired by where I grew up, which is a beach town in southeast Queensland. I've always wanted to make a game inspired by this place because I think the sort of flora that's native to that area is really unique and stuff I haven't seen in games before. And the story is kind of reminiscent to what I was experiencing when I was in late teens, early 20s, and I thought it would be interesting to make a game that's sort of a love story / coming of age story, because I really enjoy those stories in other mediums, like in movies and books, but I don't see it too much in games. So that's why I wanted to make this game.
Okay, another question here. Hi, Olivia. Wow, you've told us a bit about your influences with other games and all that, but I want to know what else you're inspired by. What else influenced this game?
Yeah, I'd say I'm inspired by a lot of different things. Like I said, I'm inspired by a lot of coming of age movies. One that comes to mind immediately is the movie Submarine, which is set in a seaside town. It's very, it's kind of a twee movie, but it's like really cute. It feels kind of strange. It kind of has this unsettling but familiar atmosphere, which I wanted to try and recreate with Olive Bay. Going back to games, another big influence that I didn't mention earlier is Kingdom Hearts. That is a massive influence on the game, especially, you know, Destiny Islands, that first area in the game, and all the scenes that sort of feature the main three. I mean, I also love Disney, but I love the story of Sora and Riku and Kairi. That is very inspiring to me and always has been since I sort of got into games. And a lot of music as well, I'd say. Often when I want to get into the mood of working on the game, I'll listen to music that I listened to as a teenager. So think of all the like the Tumblr classics, like Lorde and Arctic Monkeys and Lana Del Rey, to sort of get back into that like headspace. and also some music from games like Kingdom Hearts stuff. Those are my main influences.
Okay, what have we got here? This question says, "Hi Olivia, wow, this seems to be a much larger scale project than all your previous ones. How different is this process compared to working on smaller games?"
Well, yeah, so I have worked on a lot of tiny games in the past, and I still like working on tiny games, and I still will make them from time to time when I have a free moment. But I kind of felt like I wanted to really challenge myself and see what I could make. You know, what is the, like what kind of potential I have if I have more time for a project and if I have more resources. And, you know, I did go to uni for games, so I felt like it would be good to just try and like make a commercial game, really try and make my mark. I sort of had the idea sort of late 2018 where I thought I'd like to make a big game. I'd like to make a big game that's inspired by the town that I grew up in. And then I sort of spent the next year and a half just sort of thinking about that and planning out a few ideas, and eventually the idea sort of came together of making like a love story, coming of age story with this setting. And I chipped away on that story for about a year and I really liked it, and I was able to get funding for it. So that's why I switched from tiny project to big project. The process of making it compared to my other games, they don't even compare. I thought because I had made a lot of tiny games that making a bigger game would be easy, but I mean, there's been a lot of challenges, a lot of like surprises. I think because I'm someone who grew up posting art online and being a very sort of internet girl, I'm kind of used to having like quick, like short-term feedback in a way. So that's kind of sometimes a struggle where it's like I want to be able to show my work, but things aren't ready. There's been a few times during development of Surf Club where I feel like I've shown stuff too early perhaps, and then like it looks different later on, and I feel like perhaps that's not like a good game practice. But I mean, at the same time, I want people to see that I'm just like an artist making a game, and it's just going to evolve over time. I've never wanted Surf Club to be a project where I just work on it and then the last month before, that's when I show the game. Like I wanted it to be a process where people can see it evolve in like a semi-public eye. But it can be hard sometimes when I just need to like buckle down and get all this hard work done and can't show the game anytime soon. So that's been a pretty big adjustment. And, you know, like all the other stresses of suddenly having to think about so much more. With my small games, I would just do it, and if I was happy with it, or, you know, it didn't matter if I wasn't 100% satisfied with it, I'd just put it on itch.io eventually, and that would be that. But I have to think a lot more strategically with this game. I have to think about like what audience does it have, and how will I reach it? How will I get funding for it? So a lot of complicated questions, but I wanted to make this game like for that challenge, you know, so it is difficult, but I'm learning so much along the way. So I'm glad I'm taking this path.
Okay, it looks like it's the last one for Olivia. It says, "Hi Olivia, wow, now for the question that everyone's been waiting for. Can you surf in this game?"
Why, yes, dear fan, you can surf in this game. Thank you for your question.
That's enough of our section on Surf Club.
After the break, we'll be back to talk to the developer of Knuckle Sandwich.
Hello Kitty, at your fingers on your toes. Hello Kitty, in your hair, on your nose.
Now you can get more cool stuff than ever. Where can you get your hands on one of these latest fashion accessories? Only in a McDonald's Happy Meal.
Who's that sparkling in the sun?
Whoa!
Sparkle Beach Barbie doll sparkles in the sun with her swimsuit and bracelet for you, dolls and
So, Andy, I've been following the game's Twitter account for a long time now, and according to my calculations, it's been in development for many years. What's it been like working on a long-term project?
It's had its ups and downs. I don't know how it couldn't after so much time. It's hard to give like a clear-cut answer about that, honestly. I think with the positives, I've grown heaps as an artist. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of things you shouldn't do. But I feel like I've really kind of reached kind of like a plateau with this kind of game. I can do pretty much everything I want to be able to do with this style of game, this genre. And I'm excited still. I'm just excited to be finished. I'm excited to move on and make something new.
Wow, Andy, this project seems like a huge undertaking. Any advice for managing a project with this kind of scope?
I honestly think, I didn't do this, but you should really be doing so much planning and work outside of the engine. Before you start programming or really making any art assets or anything like that, really sit down and plan out what it is you want to do. With this game, I knew kind of like the broad strokes of it, being chapter based. I knew what would happen each chapter, just not specifically. So that was a good starting point, and I thought that honestly would be enough. But as I worked on it more, I had to feel out so many different aspects of it, or things didn't really turn out the way I thought they would when actually put into the game, for better and for worse. So yeah, I think when it comes to making a big game, really just spend half the amount of the time making it should be just outside of the actual engine, just really getting it down before actually starting in your editor of choice.
Next letter. Hi, Andy. Word on the street is Knuckle Sandwich was originally a Flash game. Did you ever imagine the project would become what it is today?
Absolutely not. It wasn't like the Flash game was meant to be this big kind of project. The only reason I started using that as a base was because it was pretty aligned to the sort of game I knew I wanted to make. I wanted to make something a bit, for lack of a better word, gamey. I'm really interested in RPGs, sort of that top-down sort of pixel art style. The game didn't even start as an RPG in the beginning, as the Flash game, and even when I first transitioned to making it a big project, that was something I just had to figure out. So yeah, absolutely had no idea that the game would become that big, because the Flash game was probably not even an hour long in total. It was very self-contained in one area, whereas this game it's very big, and it's got many areas and many different moving parts that make it work. It honestly, outside of the name and the setting at the start, it's pretty much a completely different game now.
Next letter. Hi Andy. Knuckle Sandwich seems like mostly a solo project, but I've noticed that you do have a few collaborators. How many people exactly are working on the project?
I have to count it out. So the work that I do, like I'm the lead and like I make all the decisions. And the work I do is the writing, the programming, most of the art, a lot of the sound effects. I made a couple of the songs, all the back end kind of stuff. But we've got like 5 musicians? So 5 musicians and then 2 artists as well who do like the majority of the 3D work. And honestly, like, as much of the game is very much me as a video game, I really feel like it wouldn't have had a life, like the kind of life that it has, without, you know, all the help that I've received from people, not just like people directly like adding assets to the game, but everyone is really helped out along this this project's lifetime.
Hi Andy. Everyone's scrambling to get their hands on this game, especially your devoted fan base. What tips would you share for building a community around your work?
It's tough. I think, you know, obviously I spent a lot of time working on the game. I pretty much, after like the first like couple of months of knowing I was making this a big game, and had like some art and some scenes to show, I started sharing it online. Back then I was sharing it on forums, like game development sort of forums. I was reaching out to press who had written about previous games, just saying like, hey, I'm working on a bigger game. If there's any sort of interest there, even just to, not necessarily looking for a story, like to be written about it, but just so they kind of just had it on their radar. I applied for, you know, different sort of showcases and that. We're pretty lucky here in Australia where there's like a few things, especially in Melbourne, that I was able to show the game at, just even just small like local festivals and that. And that was just kind of, you know, to get the game out there so people could just know about it. I figured I didn't really have like a big game or any like really big things people knew about. You know, I hadn't released a commercial game or anything prior. So I thought, yeah, I just had to kind of start from the ground up. Just try to build up a following on like social media, have like a mailing list, those kind of things. Eventually like Discord came along and there was enough interest there for people to, you know, who were following the game who didn't really have a central place to talk about it. So we built that up. But I guess as far as advice for it, it's just like, you know, understanding that if it takes time to make a game, it also takes time to build an audience, right? Like, you may care so much about your game, but for a complete stranger, they, you know, it'll take time for them to kind of reach that level. So yeah, just, you know, it's something you have to chip away at. Like, some people can fortunately release like a trailer of their game and it just immediately blows up, but that's just not realistic for everyone. You just have to work at it.
Okay, that's enough of fan letters. Now I have a personal question. Now, you didn't hear it from me, but I heard the game is getting pretty close to release. How are you feeling about this?
Excited, honestly. I feel like I am nervous. I don't think, you know, I think that's inevitable, but yeah, there's been so many parts of this game that not that many people have seen. I'm fortunate enough that I've been able to show parts of the game, you know, to many different people at different festivals and events and that. So I know there's people excited for it. I know there's people who like it. And I personally think the stuff I haven't shown is much better than what has been shown. So, you know, I'm not too worried about people disliking it or anything. I'm just excited to see people's reactions to everything that's in the game. Yeah, mixed emotions, but mostly positive.
That's enough of our Knuckle Sandwich section.
Don't go anywhere. After this break, we've got a very special surprise for you.
グリーンに新登場悠々白書コエンマが誘拐されたボタン道案内を頼むぜ桑原鞍馬ヒエ力を貸してくれ悠々白書
「
So we both do work on each other's games. I've been helping out with a bit of the production design sort of work on Surf Club. Olivia's done a lot of the 3D work and a bunch of cutscenes and all sorts of other artwork for Knuckle Sandwich, as well as helping playtest and all that.
Yeah, so yeah, we help each other with each other's games, but we also have made 3 small sort of short-term projects together. Those being Beyblade, Goblin TCG, and Station Street. They were all made very quickly. I recall making Beyblade. We made it on a plane.
Yeah.
Or like a flight from Japan back here.
Yeah.
The one that we spent the most time on was Station Street, which was maybe 2 months.
Yeah, I think about that. A lot of that was the art for that one as well. I think, like, Liv did like all these pre-rendered backgrounds for every single scene, which looked great, but like took a lot of time.
Yeah, that's how I learned Blender.
Yeah.
It's trial by fire.
And Goblin TCG was made in like 5 days. It's like not very good, but most of that was just the art again. There was like 40 unique cards. Some of them were a bit phoned in the end, but you know, they were worth it.
Yeah, and like those 2 were just sort of party games, so we showed them at parties here. We didn't have them released for a long time, but we recently put them on itch.io.
Yeah.
So those games are all free to download.
Yeah.
And we're pretty proud of them, I'd say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, even though they're small, they're really us, you know, and like we really learned how to collaborate together, like 50-50 on games. It wasn't just like one of us leading a project and then the other, like, you know, just helping out with it. It was like a 50-50 split between roles, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, once we wrap up our 2 main games, I'm sure we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, all the games we've made together have been in Game Maker, which is Andy's engine of choice. I do know how to use Game Maker a bit, but I mean, Andy's been using it for like 2 decades, so he can just whip things up like that. So Andy usually takes on the bulk of the programming work, and I just pump out a bunch of art.
Yeah, I think it's a good process.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the games end up being very different from stuff that I would have made, like games that I would make solo, because our games have always been very systems rich, I would say.
Yeah, right.
Which is like not exactly like something that is in any of my games.
Sure.
I mean, like, that's cool. It's cool that like both of our styles just come together, and like it's almost like a clash, but it's like cool.
Yeah, I think we very intentionally have that kind of clash, though. You know, like we have these very like out there menus that don't really work with the backgrounds and all that. Because like I love making menus. You know, that's just something I oddly get a lot out of when it comes to making games. So like the menus themselves are very systems based. You know, like I think for Station Street, I got some like clay in real life and made a whole font out of clay so that the menus could really just do all these like really fun, like, you know, mismatched like creative sort of stuff and it would look authentic. Like I took photos of them and everything. So yeah, Station Street's really like that, I think. Like push the limit. Like that has like pre-rendered art. It has like I did some 2D art over the top. We did like sketches for a lot of things. Yeah, the clay real life photos taken and edited.
Yeah, I think we get, when we make a game together, we get a bit too excited and we overscope the crap out of it for the amount of time we have.
Yeah.
So it's a fun process.
Yeah, but they're always really wild, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like philosophies. I mean, like, okay, so like I focused primarily on 2D games, Olivia primarily on 3D games. And I feel like we have very specific styles for our own individual work in those 2 styles. So when we mix them together, it's like we said before, it's like they kind of like clash, but there's still some uniform kind of style there. I think it's very intentional in how it clashes, right? Like yeah, like certain colors are used or like certain styles. Yeah, like I guess when it comes to like a game design philosophy, like it's even though like they have like all these systems and whatever in the background, it's very much about how they look. It's like the feeling of it, right? Like it doesn't even matter if the game itself isn't necessarily that good. Like I think Goblin TCG is very much part of that. Like realistically, it's not a very good balanced game, but we just wanted to like it was purely just the vibe of it, right?
Yeah, and I feel like you could say that philosophy is like also a focus on the context of a game. So both Beyblade and Goblin TCG, like I said, were like made for parties. So thinking of them in that context where they're just a game that's on a projector in a loud room with a lot of people. So thinking about what that would look and feel like, you know, like what kind of reactions we want from people, how long we think people are going to be playing in that kind of setting.
How they play it and who they play it with.
Yeah.
Because Stationer's Street feels like the polar opposite of that, right? That was, I mean, like that was made as a lockdown game. You know, we were very much missing going out to the country. And I think we imagined people playing it sitting at home alone, not being able to go outside, like just on the computer. Like the vision for that was kind of like a fantasy, like school program, like, you know, educational kind of game. You'd probably see like a CD or something that you'd get with like an encyclopedia, you know?
Yeah, and I think like that was also inspired by the nostalgia and comfort seeking that a lot of us were feeling during lockdown, where we want something that's like familiar and you know, reminds us of like a simpler time, like in this case, you know, like a childhood or like playing a game on the computer when you're a kid. That bit of escapism when, you know, after a year of being on the computer being a horrible experience, like the feeling of it being wondrous again almost.
Yeah. So like I guess just to recap back, like just to loop back to the question, like philosophy is very much just focus on the feeling and like the context. That's kind of like our major focus. Our philosophy is just honing on those two. And then what it looks like, what it sounds like, and everything, it's that's just means to an end.
Yeah, vibe-oriented games.
Yeah. Vibe-oriented, I like that. Yeah.
Well, short-term future, Knuckle Sandwich released.
Out there.
Full
steam ahead on Surf Club after that.
Yep, next year is Year of the Surf Club.
The Surf Club.
The Surf Club. And then who knows what follows us after that. We might go back after Big Game for a bit to Tiny Game.
Back to Tiny Game, back to basics.
Yeah, back to basics. We might not even be in game forever. We might try other creative ventures.
Who's to say?
But whatever we do, we're very keen to keep working together. I think we have a very good working relationship.
Great.
And we're also married, so we're bound to cross paths in our careers many times
Yeah.
in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, in summary, watch this space.
Watch this space.
Thank you for watching, and don't forget to wishlist Knuckle Sandwich and Surf Club on www.steam.com.au.